Welcome to Unqualified.
Hi, I'm Rashita.
I'm Bianca.
And I'm Amanda, and we're three teens who live in Arizona and decided to make a podcast. First things first, Rashida, quote of the day.
Today's quote of the day is, "My greatest concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure," by Abraham Lincoln, who is our 16th president.
Exactly, and this definitely ties into today's topic, which is going to be all about the election this year, which is obviously one of the biggest things that has been happening in a while. So personally, we're not going to mention any of our own opinions on um, the nominees' policies. This is for you guys and for teens who've just turned 18 and don't know a lot about politics, or anyone who wants to know more about the people who could become president. We want to give you guys the stances of the two candidates so you can form your own opinions for yourselves and don't get them from a biased source or something like that.
Yeah, so just like Amanda said, we're just presenting their different perspectives, and a majority of our information that we'll present to you today came from the Council of Foreign Relations. You can find it at cfr.org, and at the time of recording, it was updated August 11th, 2020. And we're going to include all of the links of the websites we used to research, including this website, in the description.
Inspired by the DNC and RNC a couple weeks ago, Joe Biden and Donald Trump were officially announced as candidates for presidency. So me, Bianca, and Amanda are all 17, so we can't vote, but we want to encourage all of you who are 18 and above to go and vote. So now we will be
Go vote.
Yes.
Now we'll be talking about the different stances and different policies and topics of Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is foreign policy, and we've included trade and diplomacy in this umbrella. So Donald Trump withdrew the US from foreign policy agreements as he feels it drains the US's resources. And he was the first president to go to North Korea to negotiate and make agreements with them. He also wants to bring home the troops and soldiers in the Middle East, and argues that the global trading system is rigged against the US, and believes that it is responsible for US trade deficits, a decrease in US manufacturing, and the offshoring of American jobs. So Joe Biden emphasizes that the US should keep alliances and the fact that the US cannot take on new challenges without allies. He also wants to slowly bring troops home from the Middle East, but he still wants to leave behind special forces in small numbers to deal with potential threats. Biden also believes in trade liberalization, which basically is just saying that he believes in free trade with everyone.
Perfect. Okay, so the next topic we're going to talk about is immigration. So Donald Trump, he wants to reduce immigration as a whole. He's taken executive action to reshape asylum, deportation, and visa policy. Obviously, one of the biggest things that he's done about this was the wall on the southern border of the U.S. He supports legal immigration and issues green cards to those who have followed the rules to come in. However, he will not allow generosity to those who have broken the laws to come into the country illegally. On the other hand, Biden supports comprehensive immigration reform and has in the past backed more restrictionist policies. He emphasizes the need to address the root causes of immigration in the countries of origin, and he wants to prioritize an immigration reform to give 11 million undocumented immigrants a roadmap to citizenship.
The next topic we'll be talking about is defense, counterterrorism, and cybersecurity. Donald Trump has championed the military, pushed for an increase in defense spending, and called for an approach that combines increased domestic surveillance, expanded use of drone strikes in Africa, and tighter limits on immigration and refugee admissions. And that's a direct quote from the Council for Foreign Relations. Biden, on the other hand, approved some military ventures, opposed others, and is wary of using force. He is skeptical that we can reshape foreign societies and emphasizes the use of diplomacy. Quoted from the CFR, he is Counterterrorism Plus, emphasizes fighting terrorist networks in foreign countries using small groups of U.S. Special Forces and aggressive airstrikes instead of large troop deployments. He also believes that cybersecurity is a growing challenge to U.S. security and thinks government should be pressurizing tech companies to reform their practices around privacy, surveillance, and hate speech.
Okay, so the next topic that we're going to talk about is climate and energy. So Donald Trump, he advocates for expanding domestic fossil fuel production and wants to expand the nuclear energy sector, which will produce clean, renewable, and emissions-free energy. He doesn't think that the U.S. should have to sacrifice their own jobs to lead the world on the environment. Instead, he wants to focus on practical solutions by not only defending the environment, but American jobs as well. Biden, on the other hand, he wants a national plan to reduce emissions and invest in new technology and infrastructure. He talks about how it's one of the greatest threats to our security, and he's expressed alarm over greenhouse gases, but also supported controversial energy sources such as fracking and so-called clean coal.
Next, we will be discussing economic policy, which is extremely important in today's society. Donald Trump believes and emphasizes tax-cutting and deregulatory economic policies which have spurred growth, innovation, and employment. Before COVID-19, unemployment was in an all-time low and the stock market was doing great. Joe Biden, however, warns that the decreasing economic opportunity and mobility is worsening the polarization and radicalization of American life. He proposes trillions of dollars in new federal spending on U.S. products, infrastructure, and research, arguing that economic security is national security.
All right, so the last policy that we're going to be talking about is the coronavirus, which is obviously very prevalent right now. So our current president, Donald Trump, has overseen our national response to this pandemic by allowing state governors to decide how to handle the issue. He does not believe that we should go into a lockdown because it will damage the economy, and he believes that schools should reopen safely with precautionary measures and that parents should make the decision about their children. In contrast, Joe Biden has a national plan to do, and I quote, whatever it takes to defeat the virus, expand contact tracing and treatment options. He'd also like to bring the United States to eventually be a global leader in handling the pandemic, hopes to make plans for future pandemics, and believes the decision of whether or not to open schools should be made by the state and local officials, and it should be made with safety in mind.
Okay, so now obviously we have only mentioned a few of their policies. Please go do your own research so that you can know more about these things. But the next thing that we're going to talk about is the vice president of each nominee. So Rashida, if you want to go ahead with that.
Yeah, so the VPs are probably, if not just as, really important when it comes to selecting a president. And so right now we're going to discuss just some simple qualifications that each of the VPs have and some of the impacts that they've made. First, we will be discussing Kamala Harris, who is the VP of Democratic candidate Joe Biden. Her qualifications are that she has been Senator of California since 2017. She serves on the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. She is on the Select Committee on Intelligence. She's on the Committee on the Judiciary and the Committee on the Budget. The historical impact that she has previously made is that she is the second African American woman and the first South Asian American senator in history. If Joe Biden wins the role of president, she will be the first female vice president, the first Black American vice president, and first Asian American vice president. The next candidate we will discuss is Mike Pence, who is the vice president of Republican candidate and current president Donald Trump. His qualifications are that he is the current vice president, he's a representative from 2001 to 2013, the head of the Republican Study Committee in 2005, and he was the governor of Indiana from 2013 to 2017. Now, we will be discussing mail-in ballots, which have been extremely controversial, but we just have a few words to say about it. So, Bianca?
Yeah, so obviously mail-in ballots are going to be an option that a lot of people utilize this year due to the pandemic. There will be many ballots for both candidates mailed in, and there's, like Rashida said, a little bit of controversy around it. Joe Biden believes in increasing mail-in ballots, but Trump, the current president, disagrees with this, as he thinks that many people would cheat in mail-in voting, and that if we depend on a lot of mail-in voting, the system could be rigged.
Yeah, definitely. So those are the two opinions of both the candidates. I think the next most important thing we want to talk about is the role of social media in the election. I think we want to talk about how each political candidate is using social media to their advantage, and how kids or celebrities and young adults are using these platforms to advocate for things. We've seen this so many times with over this time with people posting political posts on Instagram especially. You see a lot of those posts and how they can be biased or how are they helping. So it's definitely a controversial topic. I think it's just really interesting to talk about it, if anyone has any opinions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, because we're in a digital age right now, so obviously social media is a really important part of life now, and it can have a really big impact on the election. And it is definitely one way that a lot of younger adults and teens get a lot of their information. So there is a danger there.
Definitely.
With campaigning online, because there could be biased information and
people's words could be skewed.
Exactly,
like borderline propaganda. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Bianca that when she says that social media is part of our age, and we've grown up basically in a social media era where a lot of our information and news resources are from social media. However, I believe that there's two impacts of it, like we discussed, how there could be a positive impact or a negative impact. I think first, the positive, that it really just brings topics that need to be discussed. It brings them to the table. However, like Bianca and Amanda said, many of the sources could be biased, so it's important that we understand what we're reading and make sure that the sources are not biased and not leaning one way or the other.
Yeah, so thanks for tuning in today. Make sure, if you are over 18, that you go register to vote and that you vote in the 2020 election. No matter who you vote for, every single vote counts. And, well, personally, I think voting is one of the most important civic duties that we have.
Please go vote.
Exactly. It's a way for you to get your voice heard. So please go vote. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that it was informational. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unqualified. Follow us on Twitter at unqualified_pod. Make sure to follow our podcast on Spotify. And as we mentioned earlier, all the links with the information that we found will be in the description. We hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you have a fantastic day. We're Unqualified, and we'll catch you next time.